Hey guys, welcome back to the GM's Table. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody to like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. If you want to help out the channel more than that, check out the doobly-doo below for our Patreon link, where you get access to videos early, get access to books, get access to PDFs. Yes, playtest PDFs and released books, as well as my GM notes and anything you need to crib. Anyways, from there, there's the link. It just scrolled in. We're continuing Villains Week. I'm doing a week where each video I do is talking about ways to keep ongoing villains in your game. Savage Worlds is actually kind of the reason I wanted to do this, even though it's my second video, just because Savage Worlds is on Wednesdays. A lot of people are like, well, with Savage Worlds, how do you keep your villains around? One stray shot can just obliterate them. Well, there's two very easy ways to keep villains around before I go into the powers you might want to look at. The first is simply don't have your villains there. There's a long-standing rule in Savage Worlds of if you don't want your villain to potentially die, don't put him in the scene. Have villains be mentioned to. Find ways around the villain actually being there, which some of our powers are going to come into. Okay? But just don't have them there. Don't put them in a situation where they could be killed, because in Savage Worlds, they could be killed. It doesn't matter how tough you make them unless you give them arbitrary health or armor or whatever. And that gets kind of crappy, in all honesty. Especially if you do something like, you could say, oh, give them an armor spell that gives them heavy armor. But then when the big fight comes, why aren't they just using that spell again? So, have reasons. The other real simple one is the heroes never die rule. Excuse me. Always remember that applies to villains as well. However, that's one of those things that doesn't work for every game. Discuss that with your players. If you want a game focused around reoccurring villains and stuff, do look at the heroes never die rule and look at variants of it. The Supers Companion has the death and defeat table. Rifts has a death and defeat table, and the Goon has possibly my favorite version of it, which is basically a death and defeat table. And those are heroes never die, but it's more like heroes seldom die. If you should die, you roll on the table or draw on the table typically, and there's a chance at death. And that's a way to still have it, but lower the odds of them dying, and do remind people that could happen with the villain too. However, there is also the killing blow rule. So if the villain, or if the heroes go, well, he's down, we want to make sure he's dead, and they take his head off, there's not a lot you can do to get around it in Savage Worlds. Because unless you're playing Rifts, or a home game that's using the mega trappings from Rifts, there aren't many settings in Savage Worlds that allow you to bring back the dead without them being a zombie. Okay, there is not a lot of raised dead. There's not a lot of restoration. Okay, so when someone's dead, they're typically dead. Now, there's also the rule of thumb in Savage Worlds of enemies don't play by the same rules as the players. So the villain you could go like the D&D-esque route of he has a necromancer in tow that brings him back to life. Maybe he is like a lich where his soul goes somewhere and gets reanimated. Things like that. Vampires can do that, where they go to mist, go to their coffin, and come back. Things like that. You can have that, but if you want your villains to have the same rules as the players, which I know some GMs do, some GMs very much care about that, because some players feel slighted if it isn't. I'm not fully of that mindset. I try to until you need to go away from it. Because in the book, it says that enemies and villains don't play by the same rules. So it's fine to break that. But if we're looking at within the rules, what can we use? What tools in this book get us a villain that doesn't die quite as easily, or that can come back? Well, that's where we get into some fun stuff. So first, villains never die rule. It's the easiest one. It's literally going a rule of, look, villains will come back. You let people know. I will say, don't run those rules unless you've okayed it with your table. Don't just add setting rules to a game people have agreed on when they weren't told those are what the setting rules are. I think that's just a fairness to the party. But these are just powers. These are powers right from the power section. that all can be used to keep a villain around. I'm just going to do them in order. The first one is one you might not think of. It's an escape plan. It doesn't work for human villains. It works great for demons. It works great for undead, depending on how your world is. Banish. Yes, banish. Think of this. You have a villainous demon. Maybe he's Crowley from Supernatural. He's King of Hell. If he's in a tight spot, why doesn't he just banish himself back to hell to come back later? He goes home. He licks his wounds. You can't follow him. And he's not resisting it, so it will just happen. I'm not from the mortal plane. I can leave whenever I need to. That's useful. It's tremendously useful. Banish, in fact, I just said I'm not going to look in here. Banish does have a time limit on how long they stay banished. However, on a raise, it's sent to its proper plane of existence. Yeah. On success, it's shaken. I would honestly, this is one where I tweak. If they're not resisting it, you can just automatically count it as a raise. Maybe because it's such a good get out of jail free card, they do have to get, like, on a normal success, they're just kind of, what? Like a little shake, and they do shake themselves instead. And they need the raise. But that's huge to get them out. Yeah, this actually doesn't have the really long, sorry, excuse me. This actually doesn't have the really long durations. I'm thinking of ETU. In ETU, if you banish something, it stays banished for like up to years. This, they just get to leave. Moving on from that, Burrow. Burrow is all about the trappings, because Burrow, you could leave a hole from where you burrowed. However, in its own description, you can just meld. Imagine facing someone who has access to arcane magics. You finally have them cornered, and they just sink into the floor. You're not following them. Especially like they sink in the floor. All right, well then we begin chipping away. It's like a concrete floor. We begin chipping away. By the time you guys make any headway, they're long gone. That's not even to say if there aren't like catacombs or even just another room underneath where they just sink into the other room and book it. Burrow is huge. Now, what if there is another room below them? Say you're in a crypt, you know it's multiple layers of catacombs. Or you're in a church, you know there's catacombs below. Well, all right, well, just in case, we're going to have somebody in the catacombs too. Well, if it's more than like 5 feet of material they're going before they hit it, he might go, peek his head out, see someone there, swoop back up, and just more or less swim through the dirt. Because it's Burrow. They can just keep using it for the duration. Get far enough away, come out somewhere else instead. It's very useful. Burrow is a great escape spell. Disguise. Now, disguise in the most obvious sense is, alright, you're chasing someone, they get into a crowd, they disguise themselves, they slip away. However, disguise is also great for doppelgangers. Get any chump who is just looking like a willing minion. You disguise them to be you. Disguise is how you get duplicates. Put disguise on others to look like the villain. Have stand-ins, have duplicates, have replacements. We killed him! Did you really kill him? Because that seemed real easy. Did you kill him, or does he just want you to think you killed him? That's the power of disguise. Now, you can also, there's different, again, it's all in the trappings. You could have it, you kill him, and it turns out like its shape changes back in the original form. Disguise combined with one we're getting down later, which I'll bring up now of Puppet, can be horrifying. Imagine this. The villain puppets a player's mother or loved one into doing their bidding. The villain then disguises the loved one as themselves. And they trick the party into killing their own loved one. That's a villain. That's a villain that the party will hate. But it's well within the means. Now, some of this is based on durations that are limited. If you're in no PowerPoints world, durations can be much longer. However, also when you're like, well, it's only like 3 or 4, and then they have to keep burning PowerPoints. Cool. Give the villain extra PowerPoints. They can have that edge. And have it set up where the villain's in hiding. When they know they're close, all of a sudden that tied up mother, we're just going to say mother, gets puppeted. Well, now we can untie him. Next, like first round, puppet. Second round, whoop, untie. Third round, disguise. And if you're willing to multi-action, you could probably cut and do one of the spells at the same time. 2 rounds. That's it. And all of a sudden they have a doppelganger. And by the end of that, they're already going and hiding and working on getting away. Because they just have to, it just has to last long enough for the party to kick the door down and kill the villain. You just got to last long enough for the party to hang themselves. Now, next up, this is how do they know they're coming? How's this? How's that? This is one of my most, kind of my key powers for a lot of your big villains. How do villains do what they do? Divination. Divination is something, in one way or another, depending on your trappings, every good villain should have. Because here's the thing. Divination could be trapped as, like, weird science or something. Just look at the rules for divination and trap it as a spy network. I have a divination watch. What's your divination watch? It communicates with all my spies that are everywhere. That's a divination, okay? The ability to see and know where the players are and what the players are doing at any given time is powerful. It is one of the most useful tools if you want a good reoccurring villain, because it's how the villain believably stays one step ahead of everybody. I mean, technically, you could do divination in like a Moriarty Sherlock Holmes thing of, what's their divination? Well, I know you well enough. I'm smart enough. I just figured out your plan ahead of time. What? It's divination. It's basically, I'm so smart it's magic. Depending on how your game works, even that can fly. Ooh, they're not magical. Well, that's why we took the superpowers route instead and just did it that way. So he has this limited pool of resources where he can calculate and try and figure out what's going on ahead of time. And we just retrap divination. Divination is so useful and so powerful and so good. Just so good. Keep it. Seriously. Kind of clip, like, go clip out from the PDF if you have the PDF of divination. Just keep it. Like, print it, put it in your back pocket. Keep those rules, because those you will likely use more than anything in here. Next, we got 3. I'm just going to rapid fire these because these are standards. Fly, intangibility, invisibility. These are your obvious get out. He flies away when we fire at him. Cool. So you can potentially take him out as he's flying away, but unless you have the ability to fly after him, unless you take him down, he's getting away. Intangibility. It's similar to Burrow, but instead he's wispy, he goes. It's useful. Burrow I actually like better because you can stay in a solid material, which means knowing the direction the villain left is harder to trace. Intangibility, you they have to move through things and end outside of places, so you can try and track them. That's where the room below works still, is intangibility. However, if someone's down there, they don't have that option of just staying in the material till they go where no one is. And invisibility, again, similar. Now, I love to use villains who try to do their best to make it look like they're teleporting when they turn invisible. Just, did they leave? Are they still here? Keeping that confusion works. In fact, the last one on my list, because it's alphabetical, is teleport. I'm going to lump teleport in right here. Again, these are the obvious get-outs. Now, teleport in Savage Worlds is very limited range. So I would actually say invisibility tends to be more useful, because they can just keep running. But do note, depending on your trapping, invisibility might still make noise. It's not that great of a get-out-of-jail-free card if your players are clever. After those, mind reading. How is mind reading a get-out-of-jail card? Or a get-out-of-a-tight-spot card? I like calling them get-out-of-jail-free cards. Negotiations. How do the villains always know what chip to offer to get out of a tight spot? How do they always know, I can help you with this, I can help you with that? Now, it could be similar to that Moriarty, you retrap it, but mind reading. Just Knowing, granted, you're going to have to see them, but knowing the player's plan will let them kind of shift and adjust ahead of the plan, which is great. Knowing what they care about and what they're willing to give up for what they care about is something a good villain will use every time. The key is manipulation. Mind reading is so good for manipulation. And mind reading all of a sudden turns things into a social encounter where they are going to have a huge upper hand. Feel free in those social encounters, if they have mind reading, they get like +4. Why? Because they're reading your mind. Alright, cool. If you want to say it's a multi-action, they're taking a -2 anyways. It's still a +2. Because they know exactly what you're thinking. They know counter arguments you're about to give before you say them. They know the things you care about. No matter how good your poker face is, your brain doesn't have a poker face. So keep that in mind. Then shape change. Shape change is super useful for getting out of places, but also he runs into the sewer and turns into a rat amongst dozens of rats. Things like that. Shape change into things around you. So then you have, I'm so sorry. Then you have that crowd confusion. You don't know who it is. It's kind of a duplicate situation just as animals, because shape change is basically animals and creatures. Better than that, though, if your villain's high enough power, is summon ally. And not because of the bodyguard and stuff. Those are handy in a fight. We're just talking about getting away. Mirror image. Summon ally mirror image is so useful for getting out because it's the puppeted, disguised minion route of yourself. You just create another you. And while they're, like, again, you want to do that and them not know you've done it for it to really be useful. But mirror image and go out a secret door moments before they come in. Even if that mirror image only lasts a little while, it can keep them busy because it can still fight them. And you're already booking it. And even if you don't prolong the power and it dissolves itself or whatever, doesn't matter. You're already well ahead of them. Keeping a villain alive is just keeping the villain ahead of the party. They don't have to be across the world. Just ahead of the party. And that's it. We already talked about teleport. These are the powers just right here, right in the core book. Not really any tweaking. Banish, you might want to tweak a little. But that's real simple. This is without coming up with things from other settings or making your own stuff of things like shifting to another plane. That's kind of what Banish is, but do it to planes you're not native to. Things like that. There's a lot of ways to keep the villain alive. But they all revolve around one thing. Get them as far away from the player characters as possible. Don't keep them in the same room for long. You want that scene where the villain monologues? Have a duplicate. Any kind of duplicate you want. It can even be an illusion. Sadly, the core book doesn't have illusions. Fantasy does. I hope Black will add illusions. But have an illusion. Have a stand-in. And you want to do a stand-in that's a loved one, so when they go, I'm not going to let them monologue, I'm just going to kill them, and it turns out they killed someone they care about, then not only did the villain get away, but even without the villain being there, they twisted the knife. It's like, haha, I got away. I fooled you. Not only did I fool you, I tricked you into doing something horrible. So, that's it for my powers and tricks to keep your villains alive in Savage Worlds, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye. If you like that video, check out another video over here. Whatever it is, it's probably pretty good. Don't forget to like, share so other people can find the channel, and subscribe right up there. YouTube now won't let me put a link to the Patreon, but there is a link down in the description below. So if you want to help support the channel, check that out, and I will catch you guys next time.